So thank you for having me, and I wanted to thank Mitzi for the invitation, and definitely want to thank April for all of the liaisoning and going back and forth, because as we all know, schedules are really busy. So it was a challenge to make it happen, but I'm glad to be here. So one thing I wanted to talk about before I begin, actually, is I wanted to apologize because I know that I have had literally hundreds of people try and contact me over almost the last 2 years. In May it'll be 2 years, and there has been no communication. So I want to say sorry, but unfortunately we have had some pretty rather significant IT acquisitions working their way through the process, and I wanted to make sure not to be involved in any sort of vendor outreach or vendors coming into the department. So some of you may be throwing darts at my picture or something, but please, I am sorry. Things are changing, so I just wanted to say that up front, and I will try and do the clicking. Here we go.
Good luck.
There we go. So what I want to talk about is I was asked to talk about my focus areas or priorities, and then kind of how industry can help, or how this organization can help. And I have 5 focus areas that I've literally talked about since day one. Before I go into them, I wanted to share that one of the agencies I was at before coming to education was the Veterans Administration. And when I was there, I was a facility CIO, then a network CIO, and then the associate director of the hospital, and then transitioned. But what I wanted to share is that every morning I used to get morning briefs, a morning report. We'd come in, and the chief nurse exec would brief on what's going on, how many beds are open. We'd have the police service that would brief on the amount of crime, whether there were break-ins, whether there were thefts, or whether there were altercations, and all sorts of different crimes that would happen. IT would brief on kind of a status. You'd go through the emergency room, would brief on the number of patients that were admitted, and so on and so forth. And the reason I'm sharing this is because what happened is after a few weeks, I noticed that it was kind of a point in time. And we started looking at, well, wait, we should start tracking this over time. And we had spreadsheet after spreadsheet. But so one of the things that happened is I started asking, okay, well, let's compare this to yesterday, and let's compare this to last week. And it was very interesting. Within a few weeks, the information became more valuable. In that, as an example, we found that there were certain areas within the parking areas that those vehicles were broken into more often than others. And we found a lot of interesting things. We found that there was equipment that were certain areas of the hospital that ended up missing, which you're probably all wondering, why is he talking about a hospital? But it's actually about the information, because we were using that information and we found that there were trends. So data is so important to everything that I do and that we do, not only in government but across the country and the world. So important. So what happened is when we found that there were break-ins in a certain area, we modified and adjusted and adapted, and we had different police routines that they changed, and they would go and monitor that area more, or we would provide more lighting in a certain area. And the end result was we had less break-ins and less crime, less altercations when we had police who were going around areas, certain areas of a psych ward as an example. We noticed that we were able to use the data to have a positive impact on the community and the service that we were doing. So I wanted to say that just because everything that I do, I think about that all the time. There's numerous examples, I'm sure we all have them, of how we use data to make decisions. So I wanted to say that just because I'm going to reference that later on. So the 5 areas, when I first got to the department, one is security. Cybersecurity is always going to be a focus area. I'm going to give some examples of what we're doing in just briefly, because I could literally spend hours talking about all the things that we're doing, and then talk about some of the things that I would be interested in or hearing about. Governance. A lot of that primarily has to do with FITARA, but it's not just FITARA, but it's absolutely critical to everything we do, making sure that we're doing it for a reason, that it's aligned with the strategic plan of the department. Anyway, I'll talk a little bit about that. Customer service and service delivery. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and in essence, that to me is really important because in IT we facilitate the mission of the department or where we're at, and it's based on how we deliver service and whether or not the customer service is good, and so very critical, important. Innovation and creativity. This also is really important. What I have noticed, again, a lot of my career has been spent in healthcare IT, and I have noticed in many of the agencies, I've been to 5 agencies, we operate like an emergency room. We wait for an emergency to come in, we all wrap ourselves around it, we address it, and then we move on to the next emergency. So innovation and creativity is where we're forward-thinking, we have the opportunity to look beyond the emergency of the day, and we start, planning ourselves for the future to make sure that, we're making better decisions as we go. And then people and organizational health as well. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing there, and then, of course, solicit feedback and information or requests for information. So, boy, I am challenged at this as well. Oh, I shut off too. Is that wrong? I know. I'm sorry. I know there's a button I have to push. I know. It's okay, everyone wanted a break anyway. Oh, look, hey, see, so is it just a button? Okay, I'm good. I'm going to ask someone else to flip the slides, okay? I'm good. Which one do I flip? These two?
These two. I know these two.
Okay. Okay, I'm going the wrong way, but that's okay. Okay, good. So, security. And again, a lot of you have probably seen something similar to this. I did want to share that security, of course, absolutely critical. And what this is trying to demonstrate, and these are all over, so this is not an original example, but it's trying to show the defense in depth that we use at the department to make sure that we're protecting the information. And on the actual diagram has all of the information that unfortunately I can't share. I have the specific things that we have in place for each of the rings, if you will, and there's more rings as well. So I just wanted to share that, again, comprehensive, concentric, defense in depth, what are the things that we're doing when I think about, well, how can I, or what could I possibly use help with, is looking at what could the department be doing better? Because we can all do better. Again, we've made a lot of progress. I know I've been at the department almost 2 years. It is a very different place than when I first got there, and I think we were on the best path to get where we were going, but we need more help there as well. So I'm not going to walk through each of these areas. It's just to demonstrate that we do follow defense in depth. There's a lot of different security tools that we have. People probably are aware. I wasn't really aware until I started looking at the department. We are like a big bank. We have a lot of financial transactions as we give federal student aid to people. Over $1 trillion goes through our financial management system. That is a lot of really important data that we want to keep really, really secure. We also have, I believe it's the 3rd largest source of PII in government because we have a lot of Social Security numbers. I want to make sure that we're protecting them and securing them and doing the best we can. So those are the types of things that I would be very interested in is what can we do better. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about, and this is something that I know it's kind of a bit of an eye chart, but I wanted to show what we're doing at the department as it relates to how we're assessing risk. So we all know the executive order came out talking about strengthening and enhancing cybersecurity within the federal government. We had to align our security with the NIST cybersecurity framework, and one of the things that we've actually done is we have a scorecard that we issue that gets issued every single month. This is all sample data, just to be clear. None of this is real, so just to be clear. But what it does is it walks through through the cybersecurity framework, through the 853 controls, and what it tells me is it lets me know, because we have 284 IT systems in our inventory. We have over 100, I think around 120, it fluctuates, 126, 124, 126 FISMA reportable systems. That's a lot of information. As Mitzi was mentioning earlier about the amount of data and the amount of money from an IT portfolio standpoint, that is a lot of information to keep track of and to have a snapshot right then and there. So what happens is my team developed this. We are leveraging this, meaning every month I'll get this report. You can actually click down and see to the actual plan of action and milestone for each of the systems as well. But what this does is this gives me a very high-level view, and then what you can see, or kind of see, is it goes quarter by quarter. I actually do this monthly, so I get to see, are we improving? Do I have systems where the security posture is not improving? And if the answer is yes, then I get to go and have a conversation with a system owner or an ISSO to figure out what is going on and what do I need to do to help improve the security of that system. So this is automated in that it comes from our POAM management solution, which we actually use the Department of Justice, CSAM. So it has been really, really helpful. And then when I'm briefing to the secretary on where we're going and how things are going, I get to let her know just exactly what the overall health is. We have our high-value assets in here as well. It's every system. But anyway, I just wanted to share that is some of the stuff that we're doing. I'm very interested in what else could we be doing, what else is industry doing. I know through the CIO Council, I talk with other CIOs, and I haven't seen something like this, but if there is work like this being done, very interested in what we can do to manage the risk that we deal with every single day. Where am I supposed to point? Okay. Governance. So I blocked out all of the, because I know originally when we had planned on doing this, there was going to be another agency here, and I didn't want to brag about our FATAR scorecard. But I wanted to say, well, you know, I want to be respectful, but the reality is we put a lot of work into this. From day one, I met with the team, and I talked about how FATAR was important. And it's not important just because it's a law. I mean, it is important because of that. But it's actually the value that it provides to me, knowing that I am involved from an acquisition standpoint, that I am involved from a budget execution, from a budget planning standpoint, that those are the things that I need. And I'll save my comments on the actual scorecard itself because there's a lot of mixed feelings on that. But what I will say is a lot of work is going into this. So in terms of what I'm interested in from, you know, an ACT-IAC standpoint, and I know there's a lot of work that's been done on this. I've read white papers on it, so I think it's really good. But what else can we do to help improve the way that we govern the systems that I am overall responsible for? Okay, so this is about customer service and service delivery, and I just wanted to show this here only because this we took a contract that had been in place for a really long time. It was recompete, and I just wanted to show how it was restructured. This is just more for awareness because the focus, as I mentioned earlier, is about customer service and service delivery, because I want to make sure that we have the flexibility or agility to make changes if we need to make changes without impacting everything else that's going on. Again, from an IT standpoint, all we do is deliver, you know, we facilitate the delivery of the mission through IT. And I will say that literally my second day at being at the department, we had a town hall, and literally, it was not a very pleasant experience because we were having some pretty significant challenges in terms of service delivery. I am actually really pleased that even literally that same week, we agreed, with the IT service provider that we have. We all came together, we went out, we had weekly pulse check meetings with the regional offices, with the IT points of contact within each area, and we are in a completely different place now. It used to be every single meeting, every single week, I would hear about some challenge that we were having, and that is not the case anymore. So we are in a much, much better place. But I'm very interested in terms of how can we improve customer service, how can we improve our service delivery, and again, it's for the whole spectrum of IT services that any IT organization provides. So the next piece is innovation and creativity, and before I go on here, it was very interesting because, again, when I was in Miami, I remember going to Orlando. They were in the process of building a VA hospital there, and the hospital director there was telling me that, I was telling him that I wanted to standardize the way that we referenced or called our IT programs. And I say that because we had 6 different hospitals in that VISN, as they're called, and they all had different names for like the IT help desk. One called it the IT help desk, one called it service delivery, it was very difficult. And the concern I had is if we had some sort of emergency and we needed to leverage someone or pull someone to help support, that we weren't going to be able to communicate because we weren't saying the same thing. So he said, yeah, that's great, Jason, but innovation happens on both ends of the bell curve. And he said, you've got the people who are aggressive, trying to improve and improve the organization, and they're very creative and come up with great ideas, and then you have individuals who don't really want to work very well, and they come up with really creative ways to get out of working. So I thought, okay, which is true, it's been great. But I want to say that what we're looking for is, I want to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, about operating like an emergency room. I don't want to operate like an emergency room. I understand, just like a hospital, all hospitals need an emergency room so that you can triage and take care of urgent issues right away. But then you need, a short-term care, medium-term, long-term care. You have to have that, physical therapy. You have to think beyond the emergency room. So part of that is IT visualization. And all of these really tie together, and I'm going to walk through this. But one of the things that we started, actually I had tried to start right before leaving the Department of Transportation, and then when I got to education, I'm like, this is what we're going to do, is that, you often hear that you can't manage what you can't measure, right? Well, you can't measure what you can't see or you don't know about. That was a really big challenge. So I walked into this organization, I'm like, okay, what do we got here? I can look at the IT dashboard and I know from a system standpoint where we're at, but what else is there? We talk about shadow IT. So we started doing a thorough analysis of all of our systems. So that was a visualization, and I'll actually go right into that. Now, this is really hard to see, but what this actually tells, and I'll actually zoom it up, this is our entire environment, our as-is environment. Meaning these are all, 284 systems that we have, the interdependencies. It actually, and again, it's intentionally small so that you can't see it all, because it actually identifies where my high-value assets are. It identifies what my PII is, what are my systems that I have PII in. It also identifies the costs associated with that. And I'll zoom in a little bit. I don't know if I went. Let me see if I got another one, because that's not really zoomed in. Okay, so I just wanted to show kind of a closer up view of what you actually get to see. Now, what ends up happening is, the other thing that's really important is that I get to see, okay, these are all these systems. I also have the laws and regulations and policies associated with each system, because it's very easy when you don't know what's going on. You walk into an environment, you've got 280-some systems, it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Why are we spending money on that? Well, lo and behold, several of the systems we have are mandated by law. Well, that's good to know when you're a CIO trying to make a decision about whether you cut something or scale something back or delay something. So this did that for me. I understand what are all of my systems that are mandated by law, what are all of my systems that are mandated through, department policy, and then what are all of my systems that are aligned with some sort of administration decision or effort that's going on as well. So I have this. I've been very transparent. I have shared this with my team so they get to see what's going on, and then it really shows people, at least the team, from a morale standpoint, wow, we're actually responsible for a complex group of systems that all provide the service for the department. It also, and which I also did this, and I was questioning this, but shared this with our Inspector General, because what this does, it allows them to better service me and making sure that the department is doing what we should be doing. So completely transparent. It's been really, really helpful. Now, the way that this fits in, and I'm going to talk about TBM in a moment, or actually I'll talk about it right now, because with technology business management, we've got the cost from IT cost transparency standpoint. I want to understand, well, what are the decisions I'm making? What are the costs associated with those decisions? So this allows me to do that visually so that when I look at this, and I will tell you, and I don't have it here, but I will share with you, when we actually assessed, and all of our environments, we're really fortunate at the Department of Education. I was fortunate before I even came there. We're a cloud environment. So we don't own any data centers. We don't have any federal employees. It's all outsourced, which is wonderful. One of the challenges we have, and I know that a lot of government is working on data center consolidation, we are working on cloud consolidation because I have more than 20 cloud service providers, which is an awful lot. And it creates a big footprint when you have fun things like binding operational directives that you have to deal with. It's like, okay, now I have to reach out to them, I have to reach out to them. It's just quite a challenge. So one of the things that we're looking at is leveraging this with TBM so that I know the costs associated to help inform the decisions to modernize our technology, which goes to MGT. So the items that we are looking at putting forward from the department for MGT as it aligns with the President's management agenda specifically is going to be targeting what are the things that are going to return the most funding to the department, reduce the duplication, consolidate, and allow us to move the department forward. Another piece, which again, and I apologize you can't see, but it's really hard to show everything without actually showing everything. So if you look, there's these little coral-colored boxes. Those boxes have manual processes involved. So when the department, when we were looking through what are the things that we would modernize, well, that's a really good target. Those things are primed for modernization. So we are using this as a way to not only visually display our IT costs transparently to the department, but also from a modernization strategy as well. So this came in really three phases. One was kind of the as-is environment, which was delivered to us in November of last year. And then, I want to say it was actually last week, the to-be environment was delivered, which is great. And then the next is more of a strategic roadmap on where we're going, which is really how do we get to our to-be environment. I will tell you that the to-be environment, when I briefed our secretary a month ago, actually, and just a few days ago as well, she was like, oh, that's great. How soon can we get there? And I was like, I would love to get there really soon, but I need your support. And she has been absolutely supportive of everything that we're doing at the department, which has been great, which is not always the case, at least in other agencies I've been in, and that has a huge impact on what we're doing. So here's some of the outcomes, as I mentioned. From a shared commitment, everyone gets to see what we're doing, why we're doing it. We also get to talk about the costs associated with it and the value add to the department as well. Again, I talked about showing the interdependencies between the project. And then from a cybersecurity risk, I was talking about the number of cloud service providers I have. If I have more than 20 20 of them, then that is 20 different attack surfaces, if you will. If I reduce that by half, as an example, then that's less. Yes, it's the same amount of data, but it's reducing my footprint, so it allows us to secure things better. Another thing that, and I didn't talk about, but we have, quite a number of systems with PII. As a result of this, and looking at modernization, we have a strategy of, okay, well, let's reduce the number of systems that we have through modernization by 4 of PII to less than half of what we have right now. Again, reducing the threat. And I want this, there we go. People and organizational health. I wanted to share that, as I mentioned earlier, and I know my team, when I first got to the department, was not too happy about this, but what this does is, this is a capability matrix that I started when I was at transportation. I took it with me when I went to education, and what we use this for is this, each of my divisions does this every quarter. And what it does is we have the number of the positions on the top, and it's the roles. We're not talking about the people, the roles. And then on the left, I have the capabilities that they provide. And then based on the amount, or the FTE amount of capability, I actually know, okay, who does what in our organization from a capability standpoint. Now, for me, this is really important because it tells me if I have divisions in my organization that don't have enough people, or that are expected to deliver a capability that they don't have enough resources to deliver. That is a really big problem. This allows me to know that. It also allows them, when we have to justify hiring exceptions, as you're aware, we have a hiring freeze right now, and every single position that I have requested, I have received. But it's not because I'm asking for all these positions, it's because I know exactly what I need and why I need it, and what happens if I don't get it. So this has been extremely helpful. I use this as a way to justify training. We have a certain training budget, and when someone comes forward, I ask the question, I'm like, okay, how does this align with a capability gap that we have? Understanding that it doesn't always align, and that's perfectly fine, because I know I need professional development and personal development. It's not always going to fill a gap, and that's okay, but at least I know, so that when I get asked the question, why are you requesting X amount of dollars for your training, I can say, oh, because this portion is going to fill our gaps, and this is going for professional development, because we really want these people to stay around and want to improve and enhance them so that they can continue to serve. So that is one of the ways that I'm tracking from a people and organizational health in terms of capability. And the next slide is actually about EBS. And I point this here, and it's to show a couple things. One, I'm happy that in my first year being at the department, we improved in every single indice in terms of an employee viewpoint or satisfaction within the government. And I would love to say, oh, that's great, and I'm happy about the progress that we made. But to me, going from a 44% to a 61% is still failing to me. So it's not where I want to be. But I share this because we've made a lot of progress, and I want to continue making progress. There's a lot of different things and activities that we're doing. We do team building activities. We have regular all staff meetings. I do lunch and learns with my staff. So there's a lot of different activities. But when the question comes of what do I need, I would love to hear about other ways that people in industry is engaging with their employees, and I know there's a lot of that out there, but again, that is what I'm very interested in hearing about. And I want to say, I think I have one more slide, and so how can industry help? Business processing reengineering, again, it's not always on the technology side, a lot of it's on the business process side. It focus on modernization. I told you about the amount of cloud service providers we have. That's something I'm very interested in. And I know there are lots of ways to consolidate and reduce, but that's going to be something that certainly the department is going to need help with. And then data analytics, as I mentioned earlier, is so critical and so important. So very interested in how I can continue to leverage the data that I have to make better, more informed and efficient decisions at the department. So that is all I have, and I don't know how long I went, but... Thank you.
Like I said, Jason, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I just wanted to ask about the working capital fund, what that's going to do with the MGT Act. Can you talk a little bit about what you have to do and just the process, and if you think that'll be helpful to you?
You would have to ask the hard question. So we literally have a congressional right now specifically asking about that. So what I will say is that the department is looking to leverage TMF because of our ability. We have an ability to move funds around that's specific to the Department of Education. So right now we do not have a working capital fund. We are looking to establish one, but it certainly won't be within this fiscal year. But we do have the ability to leverage TMF with the department's authority. So we're exploring from an MGT standpoint, leveraging it that way. So, any questions? Yes, over here.
Thank you, Jason. Every agency has some particular nuances in the OCIO as it relates to HQ and its various components. Can you comment a little bit about how education operates from an OCIO standpoint when it comes to some of the other components, like FSA, for example?
Yes, I can. Actually, and I know this is wrong, but I'm so glad I'm not at transportation anymore, just because that was a real challenge. Although transportation was great, just to be clear, it was. It's just a lot of law got involved, specifically with FAA as an example, and it made a real challenge for everyone, including FAA. So I want to... Yeah, that's probably the wrong thing to say, but anyway. So for federal student aid, one, the great thing is, yes, they own around over 64% of our IT portfolio. So they have their own CIO and deputy CIO. What's really great, though, is we have a great partnership. FSA their CFO was actually a part of the hiring panel for me, so we had a lot of great conversation even before I got there. We have regular meetings, so it's really about the relationship management and the partnership, but it's also about the governance piece as well. So they are the biggest principal office that's rather unique because of our PBO. So things are different. FTAR does apply, they do comply. From a governance standpoint, what has been really great is that I actually sit on their governance board. I have voting authority on their governance board, and something that is really unique that is, fortunately, I haven't had to use, but it's great to actually have, is I have veto authority on their board as well. So I actually have the ability to say, no, we're not doing that, or no, that's a bad decision, and this is why. So that has been really, really helpful. So it's really about the relationship, not just between me and them, but between the actual different operational pieces of the organization. And I found that with each of the principal offices, as they're called at education, it's about having that relationship, explaining what we're doing, why we're doing it, involving them. Our governance board actually involves the different principal offices, including federal student aid. So it gives them an opportunity to be a part of the bigger governance for all of the department as well. So it has worked really, really well. We're more centralized, which is great. We provide, a lot of the IT services for them, which is great as well. So it's been great.
Thank you, Jason. I think when we're talking about the cybersecurity, you did touch upon some of the challenges that you have, but is there any specific challenges when it comes to implementation of the risk management framework or 800-53?
So that's a great question. Of course, there's tons of challenges that we all have. I think just in general, the talent is a real challenge. And I want to be very clear that we have extremely talented people at the department. The challenge is a person can only do so much, and it's about getting more talent. So that has probably been one of the biggest challenges. And just to be really clear, we have really, really, really talented people at the department. But if you have one person that's trying to do two people's jobs, that's a real challenge. And then in industry, and I know that we had a federal hiring event through the Federal CIO Council where we actually brought in people as well. So I think attracting the talent and then keeping the talent is a challenge. That's a big challenge because there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Hi, thanks for coming today. We have one of the COIs here at ACT-IAC that's trying to kick off a TBM working group to enable agencies to implement TBM, and as one of the trailblazing agencies, departments with a TBM program in place. I was wondering if you touched on it a little bit, but could you elaborate a minute on the challenges that you faced in implementing that project and how you overcame some of those challenges? I mean, having done some of those projects in the past, I know how challenging they can be.
Okay, that's a great question, and I think education was kind of unique, and I can't talk about some of that, but I will say we were kind of unique because some of the biggest challenges I've heard is when you're implementing, and just to be clear, we are in the process of implementing TBM. We're in phase 1, which is IT cost transparency is what we're doing, meaning we actually have all of our feeds into the solution that we're using. But one of the biggest challenges that I have heard is when you're trying to make changes to the core financial system, and just the resistance to, basically some of the changes that you need to make in order to leverage the solution that you're using. And fortunately, we did not have that challenge because for now, I think it was around 10 years ago, the core financial system and all of the people who supported that actually worked for me. So that helped us out a lot. So I didn't really have that challenge. I think one of the biggest challenges we had really was the suitability and vetting and getting people through that process, but we knew, so we worked with our personnel security office to make sure that things worked smoothly. So far at this point, that it has been great. I will also say the relationship with the CFO, we have a relatively new CFO, Doug Webster, who is amazing. He's a true partner and collaborator with what we're doing. Literally right before this, we had a discussion with the TBM Council to talk about kind of what we're doing to see if we can perhaps help share with other agencies as well. So some of the challenges we really haven't had. Again, the partnership with the CFO is absolutely critical. The Chief Acquisition Officer as well, so that when we're talking about what we have to do from a contract standpoint, because initially when you first start, you've got all of the stuff that's being fed in. Ideally, we will get to a point where we'll have contracts that are written in a way that allows to feed into the systems even better, so that we'll have a more granular approach to really understanding our IT spend.
Hi, Jason. My name is Colleen Law, and I work for a company called SIE Consulting Group. I'm absolutely one of those people who's emailed you in the past 2 years, and I do not want to throw darts at your head, but I would love to speak. I'm curious what you attribute your high scores to for FITARA, specifically in the megabyte portion, because that's been a new thing and a lot of agencies have failed, and you were one of 3 that did not fail in the first time it came around. So I'm just curious how you did that and what advice you would give to others.
So what's really fortunate, and again, our IT service providers in this room right now. So what's really been helpful is that we actually had the processes in place that allowed us to do things that some agencies would have to start over or figure out what they're going to do. We actually had a lot of that in place. So when that requirement came out, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was easier because we already had everything we were already working towards that. So sorry, but that's the truth. And I am sorry that I didn't return your email.
Not a problem.
Jason, I'm Donna Glassley from Cisco Systems. I am not in your email box, just, in case you're looking. But thank you and congratulations on being completely in the cloud. But you did mention that you're going to need to do some cloud consolidation. I think you said you had 21 different cloud service providers. I was curious how many of them, what the distribution was between infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, SaaS, and then how you would reconcile taking some of the SaaS implementations that you probably consider, cloud service providers, and reconciling those back into your portfolio to consolidate.
So that's a great question. We actually have more than 20. I know the exact number, but I'm trying to be intentionally vague. And again, those are the cloud service providers that are not government as a service or government cloud as a service. Great question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that because we're still in the process of actually analyzing and assessing what we're doing for that. That is a great question, and we are actually doing that, but I don't have the specifics.
Do you want me to email you?
That would be great. I promise I will return email. jason.gray@ed.gov. Yes, please. I know I walked into that. That's okay. Next.
I was surprised when you said that it was 2 years that you were not speaking to contractors, and I just wondered whether there's anything in the OMB myth-busting memo that might have provided some relief from that.
So, no, there's other challenges to that unfortunately I can't talk about, but it was more of just there were so many different things that were going on. My first year, and again, it's hard to believe that it's been 2 years, what I really wanted to understand is my environment. I didn't want, and I know that, in other agencies, you come in, you have a bunch of vendors that are coming in, and they're telling you all these things that they can do for you, and it's not that they're bad things, it's just that, for me, I didn't really see the value in that, because I really didn't understand, all of my environment and what was going on. So that was the first piece. And then from an acquisition standpoint, because of how comprehensive, as I showed earlier, the scope and breadth of acquisition was, I did not want to put myself in a situation where there could be a perception because I've met with a certain number of vendors or some vendors and didn't meet with others because, and I know this will come as no surprise, but my schedule is literally booked all the time. I rarely have time for lunch because of how busy it is. And I did not want to have the perception that I was, providing favor to one vendor over another. So that was really what drove me. It wasn't because of some mandate. I just didn't want to put myself in an awkward position when I knew we had, a multi-million-dollar acquisition or set of acquisitions that we were in the process of working through.
Sorry.
Okay. I think I'm excited. It's great. I think I'm really happy with the President's Management Agenda. I am an agency co-lead for TBM, which is wonderful because I am really excited about where we're going. Not only where we're at, but where we're going to be going with it and what we're going to be doing with it. I know I've actually been asked to brief the CIO Council on what we're doing with it because Suzette Kent is really excited about what we're doing. So I'm really excited about the PMA as a whole. One thing that I'm very impressed with is that you often get asked a question about, the administration, and of course, I won't talk about that. But what I did want to say, which has been very wonderful, is all of the technologists, every person that I have interacted with has been phenomenal. It has been amazing. And what's been really amazing, and this literally, my first interaction with our federal CIO, one of the first meetings we were talking about kind of the way forward and what we were going to do as a group of CIOs. And one of the things that really struck me was, which again I think aligns with a lot of the work that's been put into the President's Management Agenda, is really thinking beyond, thinking into the future, being really, really strategic. So it wasn't the what can we accomplish in the next 3 years, it was what can we accomplish in the next 5 years or 10 years. And that really, really impressed me. And so I'm really supportive. I think we've got some really good actions that we have to do and that we're going to be doing. So I'm really excited about that. The other thing I thought that was very interesting, and again, different mindsets, is that when we were talking, and we sometimes talk in government of, compliance-related activities on where are we at here and what is the impact to the agency or what is the impact to that system or what is the impact to government. And I thought it was really neat because in that same conversation, she said, well, what I'm looking at is what is the impact to the American citizen? And to me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is much bigger than just my systems, education, our government, but we're talking about our entire nation. So I'm really excited about being a part of it and seeing where things go.
So, just thank you so much.
Thank you.